Hi everyone, my name's Bo. I'm coming to you from Wallyallup Fremantle in Western Australia. Really feeling privileged to be here with you all today, and thank you for making the time, and congratulations on your fellowship. Um, Today I'm hoping to, shall I just jump straight in, Rebecca? Yeah. Um, when we're communicating about things that are important to us, we live in a world that is very saturated with images through social media, and there's lots of things to take our attention. And so it's hard, and it's getting harder to engage people and make sure that they can see and hear our stories. So today I wanted to share with you a very simple framework for telling a story using images. And that can be through any medium, so in any format. So if you're making videos for reels on Instagram, or if you're taking photos and making a carousel post or on Facebook, or you're doing something on Snapchat or TikTok, or you're putting together an email to send out to people who are interested in your work. There's a quite simple framework so that we can engage people and tell them that story. And all cultures, no matter where we are from, we grow up learning stories, and it's how we remember, and it's how we understand how we're connected to one another. So I wanted to show you a couple of images. And does that all make sense to people? And can everybody hear me? And yep, great. Thumbs up. Thanks, Manelli. So as Rebecca said, I have been a photographer for the last 20 years. Most of my work has been with artists and sharing the stories of artists and their work. And what artists were finding was that they were taking a photo of their artwork and maybe posting it to social media, and they weren't getting the engagement that they were really hoping for with their work. And so I started to help artists to actually tell their whole story about themselves, about why they're doing what they're doing, how they're doing what they're doing, where they are doing what they're doing, so that people could really start to engage in their story. And that really helped people understand why they were doing what they were doing and connect with that emotionally. So I'm going to pick up that framework and share it with you today. I'm going to try to work out how to share my screen in Teams. So please bear with me while I work these things out.
Yeah, we can see it, Bo.
Great. And just trying to remember what my full screen thing was. So visual storytelling. And how can I go forward? Sorry about this, everyone. I just haven't used this format before. Okay. So I want to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land that I'm presenting this on, which is Whadjuk Noongar Boodja. And I also wanted to acknowledge the First Nations people of all of the areas where Plastic Free July and Plastic Free Foundation work. I've been teaching photography for many years. I used to teach on fancy cameras and teach aperture and shutter speed, but now I just teach everyone on their phones because that's what everyone uses. So I also, as I said, am photographing a lot of artwork. So I'm telling the story of art a lot of the time. So that's what a lot of these images you'll see are about. When we create a visual narrative, it really means telling your story through pictures. And this idea that I was talking about before is what I call visual rhythm. It's like this sense that there's a rhythm rather than something that's one thing, one thing, one thing, one thing, that we've got a little bit of flow. And when we're doing that, we're going to think about what is the viewer seeing? And we might show them first a context shot. So a context shot means what is the context of the situation of the story I'm telling? It's going to establish where you are. And that's really important so that people can get a sense of what's happening. Portraits are who is this story about? And you might be that person. It might be about you doing something, or it could be about someone else doing something. But people love to see people. We love faces. We love to see other humans doing things. So the other one is action shots, people doing. So it's like, what is the person doing? And then lastly, some details, some images that are going to show maybe texture or just give us more information. So in a visual narrative, a context shot is generally wide and it establishes where your story is taking place. So you can see on the left, I've got someone walking. They're obviously outside. They're in maybe a rural setting, maybe on a farm. There's a sign saying winery. On the right, you can see the reason I photographed this was that I was trying to tell the story of a building. So, but I need to say, where is that building first? So I really need to know where I am in the world. I could be anywhere. So thinking about where you are and what sorts of images might be telling the viewer where you are in space. It seems very simple, but a lot of people forget to explain. And with a global audience, it's really important to give some context. So here we are in an art centre and where people are painting, and I'm showing it a wide shot. I might be showing that it's a building in the bush. These are not the best photos in the whole world. They're not going, but they're going to give a very clear indication of where we are. If we're out in the bush, so these are just examples. Then in a visual narrative, we're going to think about portraits. So who is telling the story? If it's not you, is it about someone else? And that means that we need, whether it's in film, so if we're doing videos for TikTok or we're doing a step-by-step story, either way, we want to see who is doing the thing that we're interested in. So a portrait can be more formal. You know, you can ask people to be stand here, do this, or they can be more relaxed. It's really up to you and the story. And you can see here that these are really, you know, they're just very simple photos of people. And I've made the effort to put them near a window so that the light's nice on their face. The next part of the visual narrative and the way to tell a story is through the action shot. So a person doing something to illustrate your story, and it can involve a sense of movement. So anything can be, whether they're moving something from place to place or doing the activity that you're talking about. So there's a sense of motion here, a sense of doing. So in the case of the building, it was hard for me to say that the building's doing something, but I might show how someone is using the building. So I'm still looking for something that's going to create a sense of motion and movement. As a photographer, I'm doing this through still photography, but this also applies for video content. Again, this is a story about two people and they're both just doing something, and I'm just asking them to move around and do their things, painting, cooking, whatever they're doing. Lastly, in the visual narrative, we have some images that are details, and this just gives us further information about our story. So they're closer, and it gives us a different sense of scale to those big establishing shots that we started with. Now we're really zooming in and we're starting to learn a bit more about the story. So that detail might be of something, it doesn't have to be tiny, but it gives a little bit more information, maybe about a texture or the colors are interesting. So it's a really visual, it's a chance to have a visually strong part of your storytelling in details. So these are some examples. The details don't have to be tiny, as I say, they just need to give more information about the story. So a couple of quick tips. When we're taking photos, most of you are probably using your phone, but if you are using a camera, same goes. You need to wipe your lens. You need to physically get your phone and you need to clean it. And if that sounds silly, it's still my top tip 20 years in to doing photography. So that's very important. My second quick tip is to position your phone to be parallel to the subject or the background as a starting point. So when we're taking photos, we've got I'll show you visually what I mean over the next few images, but it means that we've got a starting place when we're unsure. How am I going to tell this story? Where should this person stand? Where should I stand? This is a great starting point, is to have a sense of the parallel. So when I say parallel, I mean that your camera, for example, if I'm photographing this glass of water and I'm there, I might be parallel to that. Or if I'm photographing this piece of paper, I might be parallel like this.
So
I've also, oh yeah, sorry, go again.
When you're saying parallel, you mean so that they're kind of straight like that, so that your camera's not on an angle? Yeah.
That is exactly what I mean. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. And then I would say to remember, if you have a specific story to tell, to remove some background distractions. It can be, it might only take 5 minutes, but it's certainly always going to be easier to move something. And if you can't move something that's distracting and too busy in the background, you can always move your subject or you can move yourself. So you can move around or you can move your subject. And my last quick tip is to keep trying. So it's about keeping on moving. So if something's not working, then we move. Or we try to move around our subject, or we try to move our subject. So when I am going in to try to tell a story, this is a story about two artists who are next door neighbours. They live near each other and they became a master and apprentice in ceramics. So I've got you can see on the left, I've got a detail. And you can see on the right, I've got my portrait. And you can also see that this was published in a magazine. So it is this photojournalism style, this editorial style that we can infuse into our visual storytelling. And from there, the magazine printed out a few other images, some action shots, a context shot, and another establishing context shot of where it is. It's a place among trees, and here's what the people are doing. So now we know who the people are, where they are, and we know what they're doing. And we've got a few pieces of information about that. So that's the kind of images that are always being used to tell stories. Sorry, okay. So when I'm offering and trying to find a way, and I'm arriving somewhere, I'm thinking, how am I going to tell this story? First part, how to establish it. I'm looking for these establishing shots. I'm looking for the portraits. And then I'm looking for the action shots. And then I'm looking for the details. This mix of images is what creates the visual rhythm that I'm talking about. Is this making sense for everyone? Yeah, call out and feel free to turn your mic on and ask a question on the way if you want to. Oh, I got a love heart. Thank you. Okay, so that's that story and another detail. When I was telling the story of a building, I'm saying, where is the building? Here is where the building is. So I'm giving that information. And then I'm giving a closer look at it of just that building. Then I'm doing my action shot and my details. So these are all images that have been published very widely. And the reason that they are published over and over and over again is because the whole story is really easy to understand by looking at just a few images. Here's another story that was published. So it began with a doing. And again, you can see that I am parallel to something. This time I'm parallel to the ground and I'm above the artist who's painting on the floor. And then we've got a portrait of the artist. We've got some information about their art. We also have a context image down the bottom. Where are we painting? We're painting inside this building. And then some more detail of a painting. So I'm constantly just making efforts to tick these couple of boxes over and over and over again. And another painting, and that's the whole article. And again, this is another one that I have chosen because it has been published so many times. This also a story where, okay, here we are. We get very quickly, we understand that we are somewhere remote and rural. We understand now, where are we? We're at a homestead, there's sheep. Okay, so all this information is coming in the context and establishing shot. Who is my story about? This is a story about this person. So I've got some portraits of her. I've also got her doing something. She is cooking in the location that you now know is this rural setting. Then I have some more of the context, the type of building that she lives in. I have some details, just, interesting, smaller spaces that I think might tell a bit of a story, and other details of the area. So now we have a whole story about someone. And here's the food that she cooks for people. So without any words, I know that she's in a rural location in a very old stone house, that she is cooking food, and that this is the type of food she is cooking. So the story is really quickly translated just through using this framework for images. When I photographed this artist, again, I'm looking for the portrait. In this scenario, I didn't have much for context because it was an indoor studio and I couldn't shoot outside. So I can shoot there. I can do the action shot. So what is she doing? So who are we talking about? What is she doing? And then we've got some more action shots to show a little bit of one side of the studio, a little bit more doing and a little bit more detail. So now I know about the kind of work she creates. I know what sort of work she's creating, and I know how she's doing it. So I've learned all of that in a couple of images. Again, depending on whether you are shooting your images for which we call portrait or landscape, so the orientation, if it's like this or like this, you might want to think about, that's really about turning your phone from here to here, this. This depends on the outcomes that you're thinking about. So if you're thinking Instagram, you might be thinking portrait. If your work is going more to YouTube or to websites, you might think about turning your phone around to shoot landscape. And you can see, so I begin with who my story's about, where my person is, what she's doing, some more action shots. So sometimes she's painting inside, sometimes she's drawing outside. And then some details about her work. So now I know the story of this artist. We're going to now jump out from here. I'm going to stop sharing this. And I wondered whether you have, does anyone have any questions before we move on? About this framework?
So, feel free to pop them in the chat if you'd prefer to write them, or or just unmute yourself. Yeah, I had one question, Bo, which was like, do you have I guess because you've been doing it so long, you probably just do it automatically, but is there a kind of a way that for us where this is new that we could kind of like, do you have like is there like a little rhyme or an A, B, C, D, or to get that who, what, where, action details?
I'll have a think. So I'll come up with something. I'll come up with something by the end of this session. I'll come up with a song. How about that?
Will you sing it to us?
Yes, it'll be very loud. Okay, so from here, what I'm hoping is that all of you have the plastic-free July calendar. We're going to do an activity related to this. Could you pop one of those, or I could pop it into the chat, Rebecca?
Yeah, I can pop it in the chat.
So Rebecca sent me this calendar recently when she was explaining all about the plastic-free foundation. And I thought, what a fantastic resource. This is something that you will likely, and I'm going to be trying to do now too. So I thought that together we might have a look. So shall I pop it in the chat, or did you pop it in the chat? I'll pop it in the chat maybe, if I can find it. There it is. It's telling me I can't put a PDF into the chat. So what I can do is also share my screen. Look at my messy desktop. No, I think we'll look at it here. And what I'd love you to do is have a look at some of these ideas. Using what we have, ditching disposable cups, bringing reusable containers. And it sounds like most of you have quite specific stories that you might be telling already about the work that you're doing, if it's in marine life or, different things. But I thought it might be interesting to choose something from here. Choosing natural fibres, picking up litter, plastic reduction in the bathroom. So for each of you, if you've got a pen and paper with you, if you take a moment to pick one of these, and I might pick one too, just so that we're all doing it together. I'm going to choose picking up litter. And then with your idea, has everyone got one? Or do you need another minute to choose?
I've put it in the chat as well.
Great. And now we're going to think about, if we were to choose one of these ideas from the calendar, how might we tell that story? And in telling that story, in your own words, in your own images, in your own place, how might you tell one of these stories as using this visual framework? So the narrative of, so the kinds of images you might be looking for might be, where are you? So I've chosen picking up litter. So I'm going to be asking myself, where am I going to be picking up the litter? So I live near a beach, so I'm going to choose that. Okay. So my first image is going to be of that place. My next part is who. Who is involved? Am I picking up the litter by myself? Is it something I'm doing alone? Is it something that I've asked some friends to come along with me? Or is it something that I know that people do once a week near me? So who is this story about? I might make it about my group of friends who go swimming together, and the story is that we're going to pick up litter in this place. So the next part of this will be, what are they doing? So the action will be, I will want to have images of my friends together picking up litter on the beach. And then what would a detail look like? Well, it might be some hands with what they've found. It might be something like that. That seems the most obvious to me. So I want you to take just a couple of minutes on your own. And I'm just going to put a little timer on so that I've got that. And I want you to, I'll leave this screen up so that you can see, where are you, who is involved, what are they doing, what does it look like? And if you write down or draw, what's it going to look like? What is this story going to look like for the idea that you've chosen? Now, does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone understand what we're doing? If you don't, I can explain it again in a different way. And we'll just take another minute here to get those ideas out. If you already have written an idea, try another one, pick another one and do another story.
So, Bo, we can just make something completely up that we haven't actually tried or haven't actually seen.
Yes, absolutely. His idea. And I wondered whether anyone in the group would like to share the story or the visual narrative that they've come up with the larger group. Is there anyone who would be interested in doing that? Yeah, Jess.
Okay, so I had two ideas. I'll just choose one. So I had the choosing plastic-free toys. And for the where are you, I was imagining like the setting of a child's bedroom. For the who is involved, like a parent and a small child, young child. What are they doing? Sitting on the floor of the bedroom, like playing something together. And then for the close-up shot of what does it look like, maybe some wooden blocks or some kind of plastic-free toy.
Yep. And where do you see yourself sharing that story, Jess? Like what platforms or outcomes would there be?
Plastic-free July socials.
Yep.
or even perhaps like I'm sort of in the plastic free July sort of mindset. Something like a toy library or somewhere where young kids kind of go, you know, like reading materials for maybe parents, that sort of thing. Because I guess they would be the audience that you're trying to encourage to make that choice.
Yeah. Yep. And do you think that you would do still photographs or any video in that?
Oh, I guess, yeah, you could do a video of the actual playing. I hadn't even thought about video. I was only just thinking of still images at this point. But yeah, definitely you could do a video. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I like that story. I can't wait to see it. Does anyone else have a story that they came up with that they thought they might be able to do?
Neil, you had a good idea. Maybe you'd like to share it?
You've been dobbed
thanks.
in, Neil.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks. Hopefully my connection is a bit stable. If it cuts out, do let me know. So basically what I think mine was the avoiding bottled drinks. The context would be, the example I had taken was the context would be like a conference room setting. The reason I chosen this is because in Fiji, whenever we have meetings, we tend to give out plastic bottles. So I thought if this could be used as like an awareness sort of thing, you know, if we're having meetings, we can have something to raise awareness on plastic bottles, like not to use bottled water essentially. So yeah, conference room setting, who all would be involved, like a group photo of whatever the conference is about, the action would be them carrying out the meeting them carrying out the meeting, whatever the meeting is about, and the further details would be just snapshots of participants bring their own bottles as opposed to having plastic bottles, and then with dispensers that are available for them to use for this essentially. So I guess that's just the main idea, so that all participants their own bottles as opposed to using plastic bottles in a very formal and conference room setting.
Yeah. Thanks, Evnil. And you got some clapping from Rebecca. Where would you think about sharing this? And are you thinking photos, video, any ideas about that?
I guess photos would be because it'll be pretty straightforward in the sense, and it'll be good to share, I guess, whenever we have meetings, whether it be interministerial or with other stakeholders. It'll be just good to show that the government is taking a good initiative, especially from myself working with Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, to show that we as the ministry are taking a step forward in combating plastic pollution, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I had a question, or not a question, a comment on that. I gave it a big clap because I love that story, because it wasn't just water bottles when you're going for a hike or something like that. It's really because we have people take part from all over the world in different settings, sharing what the solutions look like in different settings is really important. And I think that does two things. I think one, it helps, like sometimes it's hard to have a change like that. And so when you then can kind of share that, it celebrates the effort, but also can inspire other people. So that's the kind of story we like to share. Maybe, you know, especially on maybe LinkedIn or in our newsletter to businesses, and other business or organizations could think, oh yeah, we could do that too. So that story, I think that's the real power of these stories, coming from different places and people making a difference in different ways.
Absolutely, especially when it's not that individual person's choice. They've arrived at the conference and they're being offered the bottle, as opposed to, you know, it's like they're not in charge of the decision. So someone further up the food chain needs to make that decision. And I think that's also why that story, because it affects more people quickly. Yeah. So that sounds really good. Would anyone else like to share their idea that they spoke about with in their pair?
I would like to share what I and Kokoro discussed about. Yeah, we choose the topic to refusing plastic bag, and what we talk about the photos. The first photo to answer the question, where are you? We want to target the audience is housewife who's and we choose the contact is the traditional market, the outdoor, which is very popular in the Asian countries, the outdoor market, and target to the housewife who usually go to the market every day. And the portrait photo we will take is the housewife, and the photo about the actions. um we think about some actions like the housewife bring the reused container to store the food and give the container to the seller. And another action can be the seller put the food like meat into the container, or they can give the vegetable, wrap it with the banana leaf and give it to the housewife. And yes, so some photo of the detail can be the meat inside the container, or a graph of vegetable in banana leaf. Yeah, that's what we think about.
That's fantastic, Trang. Thank you. So this story, we've got the market, very busy, very popular. We've got a specific type of person who is going to the market often, and that is your housewife. And then the solution is that she has the container already. So she's brought the container with her. So there's no need for the plastic bag. She doesn't even have to refuse the plastic bag because she's got a solution already with her. So I love that. This is a great segue into our next activity together. And one of the things, so now we've thought about the idea of the visual narrative. And I think it's clear to me that everyone understands this simple framework for telling a story and giving some rhythm so that the viewer can get involved. And now I'd like you to choose a different option from the calendar. And I'll just share my screen again, slowly. Okay, we're going to choose another one of these ideas. Just take a moment to pick one that would be something that could be possible for you where you are. And we're going to think about it in this framework, which we're already doing. And so the couple of examples that we've just had, the problem was the plastic bottles in the conference room, the plastic bags at the market, for example. And so in the narrative, we're going to now just think about overlaying this story onto our visual story. So the person who is guiding us to the solution, so that's at the who is it about. And in the market story, the person who was guiding us to the solution was the housewife at the market. And the next step is, what is the solution? The solution was the container. After that, there's also this point, which is, so how do we do that? How do we make a plan? How did it come to be that she arrives with the container? So she's already thought about it. So in step number 4, what you're saying is follow these steps. So the solution is to bring your own container. And that means packing the container before you leave for the market. So there's some planning involved. And then we might try to find a way to visually show what are the benefits of this plan. And then success. And the success moment is the food being in the container that she's brought. And how does that look and feel? So is she happy about it? Are we happy about it? So this is very similar to it's not a different framework, it's complementary, but it's another way of thinking about how we're going to tell our story. So I'll leave this, I can't leave it up and look at you all, it seems. So we're going to take a minute to choose another idea and use this story narrative to talk about that idea. And we're going to also offer some visual things. So it might be, we might be, let's say, reducing plastic when traveling, for example. So we're going to talk about, we need to say what the problem is at this point. So we might be looking at a particular type of plastic use while traveling. And then we might be looking at who's our traveler, who's going to give us the solution. And it could be you. So you could be doing a talk to camera, but it also could be someone else. It could be a friend, family member, anyone who's going to be the guide to show us what's the solution. They'll show us the solution, they'll show us the plan, how they got there. And then there's this other part of the story, which is like, what are the benefits of this? And what does success look and feel like, the good moment at the end? Because really, to engage people, we want them to feel like it's a positive momentum toward. It's not a, it means that we finish on a positive note, and that makes people feel good, that they've got some agency. So they're less overwhelmed. And sometimes people can feel so overwhelmed by the problems that they can become completely paralyzed. So this is about giving people very simple solutions that anyone can do so that they have a sense of agency and they have a sense of positive momentum. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm just, oops, stop sharing that. And now, Rebecca, I'm going to give you a minute just to finish writing down your idea, what it could look like. In this scenario where we're working out, in terms of telling our story, we've got a storytelling framework, which is what's the problem? Who's going to show us, who's our guide, who's going to show us toward the solution? And what does the solution look like? How do we plan for that? What's the plan to make this happen? And what does success look and feel like? Does anyone have something that they'd like to share, their story, their idea that they came up with, so that we can get a few ideas? Anyone keen?
I want to share Nashra's, but I would love you to share it if you felt okay.
Yeah, I was about to open my mic, so I can share. I can share mine. Okay, so mine is overuse of plastic-free packaging. So the problem is overuse of plastic cups in takeaways. And who can guide you to the solution? I can be the solution. And the solution is to use reusable cups instead. And the plan is to always pack a reusable water bottles before heading out. And the benefit of this is to use less plastics and to have everyone to follow my habit. And then how success will look like is when everyone that I go out with follow the same thing that I did with using reusable cups. Yeah. That's my idea.
Beautiful, thank you. And within that, so we've followed the arc of your story, which is the problem being the plastic cups. You're the person who's going to guide us toward being in a situation out in public where you have your own cup. And the plan for that means that we need to take a step back in time, because we need to know before we leave home that we're bringing our cup with us. So that's the plan. So we know what the solution is, and that's how we're going to do it. We're going to, and I had sort of envisioned, Nashra had spoken about the idea of this being a video, like a reel of some kind on Instagram. And so I had seen in the plan section the image of the cup going in the bag at home. And then toward the success, what does it look and feel like? This idea that the success moment is not only that, yes, you've remembered your reusable cup and you've brought it with you to go out, but that Nashra's there with friends. And in that success moment, that there is other people also doing the same thing with her. That's her friend, so there's a sense of belonging. So when Nashra was telling me this story, this little narrative arc, I also asked some questions about what's the establishing shot, what's the context, who are the people, so what are the images that are going to be about people, the doing images, which the doing's not only getting the drink in the reusable cup, but it's also remembering to put it in a bag before you go. So they're the action shots. And that success moment is very much to do with a positive social outcome. So it has the environmental outcome of there being less plastic, and there's a positive social outcome in that everyone's doing it and you've impacted other people. And it reminded me to talk about the idea, the reason that last prompt is there, which is what does success look and feel like, is because it gives a sense of positivity. And, we want to have that sense of positive motion. We want a sense of that it's, here's a simple solution, it's doable, anyone can try it, and this is the great outcome that happens. So that's what I really enjoyed about that story. Jess.
Yeah, I was just wondering, with the part where you talk about what are the benefits of this plan. So for an example where one of the benefits is less plastic waste or less waste. And say, for example, if you've done a video, like obviously you can show like happy people showing like they're all happy that they've used their reusable bags or whatever it is. But how would you go about showing that there's less waste because they haven't used the single-use item?
The benefit is that there's something gone, not that there's something to show. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. How would you do that?
You might do that in terms, so other visual ways to communicate something like that could be, you know, the addition of images to do with nature, to do with clean air, clean water, clean beaches, clean places. So it could be that the benefit is that. The benefit could also be the emotion that's attached for the person. So the benefit might be that they feel really good about it and that's a really positive feeling. And that relates very closely and overlaps with what success looks and feels like. So it's not necessarily that there's, you know, the benefit, you know, in some stories it's going to be easier. And in other stories it might be slightly more, I want to say amorphous, but slightly more ambiguous, like what is the benefit, because we can't necessarily see the benefit. So we might try and think of other ways. So that's an idea. Did anyone else have any other ideas for Jess about how to show the benefits of their storyline?
I was wondering with Nashra's story if you could almost, because we try and focus on the solutions rather than the problem and showing the waste, whether it could just be those smiling faces and even a caption like, we saved 6 plastic bottles today, or we avoided, you know, to have, or you could do, I guess that in a video, someone could speak that too.
Yeah. So there's layers of, especially in something like a reel, where you can add text over certain sections of the images and the videos, or also caption. Yeah, for sure. And that's great also, as you say, that we saved 6 plastic bottles, you know, as a group together. I really feel in that story that the sense of belonging, that everyone's doing the same thing, is a really strong driver in that storyline. Did anyone else have a story that they would be willing to share?
Yes, I can jump in. So with my group, I discussed the idea of creating a TikTok together on the theme of reducing plastic bag usage. So here in Fiji, I'm sure Ednia will know very well, when you are buying fresh produce like fruit and vegetables, what you do is you select how many pieces you want of that particular item, and then there's someone standing in the fruit and vegetable section who weighs it for you. And this is almost always done with plastic bags. And because the weight varies depending on what you're buying, and you know every single item has a different price, this means that people use plastic bags for every single thing that they're buying. So for example, you'll see someone holding a plastic bag with 1 lemon in it, and then they're holding another plastic bag with 2 apples, and then a third plastic bag with a watermelon in it. And these have all been weighed individually, and then that staff member prints out a sticker with a barcode on it, which contains the price for that particular item, and then they stick that sticker onto each plastic bag. So what this means is that you'll see people carrying like 5 plastic bags before they've even made it to the checkout yet. So obviously it's creating a lot of plastic waste, and that's really avoidable. So I thought that could be an easy thing to target. So something that I do is I often just get the person to stick the sticker directly onto the item. So let's say, for example, I'm buying a piece of ginger. I just say to the person, oh, I'll just get the sticker and put it on the ginger. You know, I don't need a plastic bag for a piece of ginger. But this can be a bit inconvenient. You know, sometimes I'm holding 5 apples with a sticker on one of the apples and giving that to the checkout. So the best way to go about it is to bring your own bag, of course, which is not something that you really see ever here. It's not really common at all. So my idea was that we could get a group of young people, and Evnil and I can do this together as we're based in the same city, and we make a video about like come along with us to use reusable bags. So following that popular TikTok trend of day in the life or join me for this. So my idea would be that we could go to the secondhand store together, and you know, bring the camera along with us as like a point of view, first person POV. Find cheap bags there. They might be $1 or $2. You know, we can make it fun, find some cute, pretty bags, and then go down to the shops together and show us picking out some items like a watermelon or pineapple, whatever it is, and use that bag to then get it weighed. And the success there would be that it's a social thing, it's fun, you feel accomplished for doing something good, and also that it's really easy and accessible. I mean, particularly, you know, things like watermelon or a pineapple, it's already got a natural casing. It doesn't need a bag, you know, nature gave it its own little bag. So things like that you can easily just carry with a sticker on it. Yeah, so that's our idea.
I love that story, and I'm also shocked that that is how things are, that everything is weighed separately, and that in that weighing process there's a fresh plastic bag coming out. So in that story, you've got the sense of positivity at the end, because it's also got a social aspect with Evnil, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and that sort of TikTok day in the life of. And then if I were to then overlay a visual storytelling framework onto your story, what would you say? So the context image, where would you be starting from there? Context being maybe the market.
Yeah, I was thinking we could start with us, like first frame would be us all standing together with a title text or a voiceover going throughout the whole thing. You know, come with us to reduce our plastic use at the grocery store, and then it would show our journey traveling to the shop to get some reusable bags to set the context of what we're doing before we actually get to the grocery store. Then we buy our reusable bags, and also going to the op shop. You know, it's cheap, it's accessible for young people, because I've seen reusable produce bags sold here in the first-hand shops, and it's like $20 for one bag. It's really expensive. So obviously that's, you know, immediately deterring people from the easy option of just buying the produce bag and get involved that way. So it's giving that creative solution of we can bring any bag, you know, it doesn't have to be a specifically organic made expensive bag just for produce. So we then go to this the op shop, record our journey there and finding things. You know, we could have some silly footage of someone like trying on a bright pink sparkly hat to make it look fun. The journey of going to the op shops and then going to the grocery store. So that would be the scene setting of how we got to the grocery store.
That whole arc sounds quite fun. So going to the op shop sounds fun, and then going to, you know, all of those things have a fun component. So I really like the upbeat nature of this story. And it does involve remembering to do something prior, but what you've done is you've turned getting the reusable bags into a social activity, which sounds really awesome.
Right.
Does anyone else have any thoughts about that story or things that they, so just thinking about, there's the context, did it give you any ideas about what sorts of the details might be? Because we've got the sort of sense of who it's about. What might the details of something like that be?
I think maybe a good detail could be being really transparent about prices. I know that that's a big thing on social media now. You know, when people are buying or making something, they'll often break it down very specifically and show exactly how much things cost. Like now there's the thing where people do cooking videos and they'll break down how much one portion of that meal costs. So they do like, oh, this is my cost of living dinner series. Episode 2, I'm making a chicken curry. This is exactly how much it costs. And they'll say, oh, it was 20 cents for this splash of coconut milk, you know, really breaking it down. So then people, especially young people trying to save money, can figure out exactly how much. So, in this context, it could be showing just how cheap things are at op shops, because a lot of people never buy anything secondhand and they might not even know how cheap it can be, just to show how affordable it really is. That would be a detail I think would be helpful to include.
Yeah. That sounds really good. I really like that. And because that makes everything accessible.
And maybe also an image shot of it, like how those products, when they've got the stickers on, like actually seeing it go through, seeing people at the checkout or the register scanning it, like seeing it. Because for me, that would be the question, oh, I might try it, but oh, does this really work? Or, you know, do people give you a hard time if you're just putting your stickers straight on something or in a bag? So to keep it real, no, not real in that way, but like a real is in, you could kind of see it from start to finish. I love this idea. There's so many good ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea about the scanning through to make it really clear exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing those stories. Welcome back. I had a little leg stretch. That was good. So from here, what I would love for you to do is to try to use this framework as we're going through the process of being an ambassador, being a role model to others. In most situations in this role, you're going to be the person who's the guide. You'll be the person who's, so in the story arc of what's the problem and who's going to guide us to the solution, you will be that guide in most cases. So, that's also a chance for you to be in that leadership role as part of this ambassador program. And also to be a role model to the people around you. So I wanted to make sure that that's also infused in the way that we're telling these stories. And also, as part of that role modeling, that you're a normal human, that sometimes you forget to pack something, and maybe and systems and ways that you remember to do things. So using your own story is really important here. And finding ways to personalize that story, because that's how people are going to connect with you. And being sort of vague about that, like one of the reasons I like Nashra's story was because she talked specifically about her group of friends. So she's bringing us into her world, and it's quite personal. It's not sort of some other person, a random person brings a cup and it's and that's the end. They've saved 6 bottles. It's more like, this is what I did and it was really fun, and I did it with my friends because we're already doing this thing. There's a kind of saying about the way, this sort of sense of belonging that we create, and we create that online in our digital communications. And this is the way we do things. This is who we are. This is the way we do things. So, just to go back to that story, Nashra's saying, this is who we are. We're young and we do this activity together. So this is, and this is how we do it. And, that's the sense of belonging that I'm talking about, because it creates a we, so that people who look at Nashra and say, oh, she's about my age in my city, you know, seeing someone who looks like me doing something, like I can do that. So it becomes a connection point, becomes more personal, and it means there's less friction for people to try the thing. And that's what we're always looking for, is to lessen the friction, to make it easier for people. Because at the moment there's less friction to use the plastic, as the story about, you know, weighing things in plastic. That's just what's happening. There's no friction there. And then Rebecca's saying there is some friction. It's good to talk about that little bit of friction where you actually have to ask or say, hey, can you put that sticker on the ginger instead? And maybe that's a bit weird, but also that's what we do. That's how we do it. That's how my friends do it. And we're okay with that little bit of friction. So yeah, that is part of the role of being a role model. I wanted to take a moment to have a little think about, we've talked a little bit about this idea of storytelling, and we can keep using this framework over and over. So as we go through, you know, whether we're doing the 31 days of ideas, so that will be really, this is a great launch pad, but you'll also have your own stories. So I want you to take a moment to think about something that is a story that you want to tell. And it might not be here. It might be specific to your life and your world, specific to your friendship group, specific to your family, something like that. So just want to take a minute to have an idea. It's okay if it is here as well, but if there's something else that's more specific to your family, your workplace, and your story, something a bit more of your own making. We'll just take just 1 minute to sort of jot down some ideas of some stories that you might like to tell over this time while you're an ambassador.
One of our fellows, Jackie, who's not actually able to make it today, but just wanted to share that he's decided to host a plastic cleanup with one of the other fellows, Patricia, who's also not available today. So their story with that has been seeing plastic waste around and wanting to do something about it, and they've chosen this program as a great time to do that. So together they're going to be going around cleaning up and recording it, creating content to inspire others as well.
Beautiful. I love that. Does anyone have a story or an idea that they have just written down or would like to share with the group that's not necessarily part of the 31 days of ideas? Any other ideas? So from here, what I'm thinking is, as we sort of build these stories, and what's that say? What was that photo?
Oh, sorry, I just put in a photo there, Bo. I guess it's,
yeah.
I guess I'm just asking from the angle of, rather than it being a story about something that we've done, like how you make that. I went to this cafe recently, it's a Japanese cafe, and they just had some like those nice stainless steel cups, and instead of having the soya sauce and the wasabi in little plastic fish. Sorry, somehow we've just managed to lose Bo. Sorry, Bo, we lost you for a sec there.
I'm back. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I'd seen this at a cafe, and they had nice stainless steel cups, and you could have tea or water, and they had all of their sauces in little, and wasabi in either a bottle or a like in a little container of sauce. I saw something and it was really good, and I wanted to share it, but then like they were really busy when I had my lunch. They took my own container and put my sushi in there, but how do you kind of then make that story about, it's like something you see and you think, oh, that's really cool, and maybe if I share that, then other cafes might feel inspired to do that, and how you could build that story narrative when you just quickly see something. I guess it's following those same principles.
It is absolutely following the same principles. And it may be that you only have time to take one photo, let's say. But it means that when you do take that one photo, that you can then extrapolate on the idea in your caption. Or if you are constantly looking for these ideas, it could actually end up grouped together too. So you could have 3 amazing plastic-free cafe solutions that I've seen this month. Or, 3 people doing something, so you can sort of start to group things together. And I think just collecting the information as you go, because you're not necessarily, as you say, you're going to a cafe for lunch, you see something really good. That doesn't mean that you've now suddenly got time to create this whole visual narrative about that place. So taking one image, but having a little think, like if there's a person there, if they do have a minute, it's like, hey, would you be interested in getting a photo with this sign? Or, it could even be a detail of you using the wasabi in the stainless steel container instead of wasabi being, it's like you holding the thing. So you're still using the framework. You're still thinking, how can I do a portrait here? How can I do a detail here? Maybe I can take a context shot. One of those, and then in the mix with some other things, is going to make sense to people. So it might be that there are, as I say, three great ideas this week, or 3, it's like you're just finding ways to group ideas and build that content. And a lot of people do that, who are constantly in that content creation space, by creating some folders in their photos on their phone. And that is just like, you've got a folder, or you're creating little albums, and that way it's like every time you've got a good idea or you're seeing something, it's just going in there, so it's not lost in the thousands of selfies and thousands of other things. You've actually got these albums of content, so you can, you've got something to draw on all the time. So that's also something to think about, just as we go through the world, that we're constantly collecting and just popping it in the album, because that way we've got, consistent access to content. I wanted to take a moment to think about, what are the connection points? Like, how are we connecting with our audiences and our communities? And sometimes I think about the idea of followers being like a community. In real life, we have a community that's made up of our family and people that we live near, people with special interests, people who are friends of friends. We've got these communities around us. And I'm wondering, in this group, what are the connection points that we have? And when I say connection points, I mean, what are the formats in which you're speaking to people? And I'll just give you a minute. You can write them down, but I'd also love it if you could put it into the chat so that I can find out what other places. So I think Alan said LinkedIn earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, I was quite surprised. I always forget about LinkedIn. So I'd love to find out what are the other avenues that we're using. So if you could just start dropping them into the chat, and I'll add mine as well. So I'm mainly, Someone did mention TikTok. Want to pop that in if you're a TikTok user? How else are we speaking to our people? LinkedIn, through presentations, conversations in real life, interviews. Oh, Substack, yes. A website. Yep, fantastic. Great. That's anything else? So another one that I have, the podcast. Oh, and the other place I was thinking that might be interesting, I don't know if if you're already part of existing groups. So it might be a large, like a WhatsApp group. It might be a Facebook group, things like that. Are you part of any of those sorts of groups? What else are we using? So from these connection points, I guess it's interesting to think about where people are and who we're speaking to. So if I want to speak to people who, like, I'm not on Facebook, but if I really need to speak to a really large group of people in my region, so in my area, I would probably need to be there, perhaps, if I had something to say about it, because that's where a broader population are than the people that I'm usually seeing on Instagram. Does anyone have any comments or queries about these connection points and how we're connecting with our people? Because I think it's really important to think about what are the outcomes for our stories and who is going to be hearing them. Does anyone have any thoughts here?
What I find interesting, I feel of having different platforms, but the message is sort of has to be, I suppose, uniform, but then also in a way sort of twisted in a way to fit that median and fit that target audience. I find that's really fascinating from a point of view of like whether, like, I think like we discussed, like something on LinkedIn is going to be kind of different from something on Instagram and Facebook, and how you sort of relay that information and the message that you're trying to send to your audience in 3 different ways, but the same message. And I think that's important. But I think an example would be, I used to be a coach at Football West in Perth, and I used to have to say a message towards physical disability, people with physical disability, like, and explain the drill that we're going to do, and then I had to take a couple of the young kids with intellectual disability aside and explain the same process, but in a way that they understood. So I think that's kind of to like relate it to that. That's kind of something that I was thinking about when I was kind of thinking about our target audience or what we're trying to get across.
Yeah, and that's a great introduction. In marketing, it's called repurposing content or reimagining content. And so for something like, so the sense that we have the same message, so our story is the same, but that we might have to reimagine or repurpose that. We might have to reformat it so that we can put it into other outcomes. So we're going to have a little think about that now, because it's really important to think about more than one avenue for our content to be landing, because otherwise it's quite hard work to be producing content for a single outcome if it can't be used over and over again. And as we know, so looking at this list of connection points, places like Instagram are going to have algorithms connected to them. So, even if your follower count is 10,000 people, maybe 1,000 people of the followers will see that content, and then maybe 5% of those people, so maybe 50 or 40 people might engage. And then of those people, 2 or 3 of them might, actually take on your call to action. So whereas things like your website, again, you have total control over what people are seeing, but you have to get them there. Something like Substack doesn't have an algorithm, so you're just getting the information as it comes chronologically, which is fantastic, but that's also a very specific and growing group of people on Substack. It's very much for writers, and it's got a great flavor. I love it, but it's a different crowd and it's a different format. It's a lot more like an email newsletter. So an email newsletter and a Substack post would be very similar. And so, yeah, what I would love you to do now, we're going to drop back into pairs. And I want you to have a talk and a think about something that we've talked about. One of the stories that we talked about, whether it was a more personal story, whether it was one of the two that you chose from the calendar. And I want you to have a talk with your partner about the ways in which we could reuse that content in another format and how we might do that. And we might even help one another. So as the partner, your role is to ask questions and help your partner think about ways to repurpose their content. I'm just going to read what Trang's saying. Posters, word of mouth in the market, social media, Facebook group. Yes. So that's there's all these different, so you've got posters as a connection point, which is print. You've got word of mouth, which is in real life recommendations. And then you've got the commune house, and then social media like Facebook. So these are all, so that what that story could look like and how it might have to change in these different formats. So Rebecca, we'll just give sort of 5 minutes here to have a quick chat about, firstly, we'll explain the content, and then we'll go into what are the outcomes.
We talked about Instagram. And yes, Instagram includes some text and photos, and we can have the opportunity to hold some live meeting on Instagram, and it is very useful to connect others. And we think that when we know about someone in the first time, it is better to have the less information, because if we have that lot of information at the first time, we couldn't we don't want to read all of them. And so the Instagram is small but impressive information we can spread. So we think that Instagram is more better way to connect and share each other's.
And also within Instagram, Kauai, there's so many avenues. So, we've got stories and reels and, and live and all of these sort of different ways. So interesting. And sorry, I don't know why it took so long for me to come back into the group room. But I did catch most of what you said, Kauai, so thank you. Did anyone else have something to share about the way that they could pick up some content and move it to other outcomes and repurpose the content? I wanted to, if it's okay, Jess, would you mind sharing what you shared with me? Because that was sort of interesting, thinking about some formats being quite similar and easy to reformat, and then others being a little bit more, like you'd have to put in a little bit more effort.
Yes, the idea I had was around the problem of people getting their coffee in a takeaway cup, but then staying and dining in. So it's not exactly the same as one of the options on the calendar. I think we've got staying and enjoying or something like that. So it's a problem for the cafe, because when the person orders their coffee in a takeaway cup, they don't realize that they're going to stay. And it's very difficult for, I think, the people that work there to police something like that. So I was thinking of, you know, perhaps it could be tackled in like a short video, like a reel for social media. But then it could also be like extended to perhaps make a video for YouTube, or we could do one of those things where like they stop people in the street and ask questions. Like Bo said, it's called a vox pop, I think. Is that the word? Yeah. It's one of those kind of difficult things, I think, because I don't like it when I see it, but I also know people that do that, and it can be kind of awkward to sort of talk to them about that, because, you know, we don't really like telling people that we don't like what they're doing. But it's also something that we could perhaps use that sort of topic to create like educational material for the cafe, so that might be something they could just have a sign at the cash register to let people know that, you know, they prefer people to use their reusable cups if they're staying to have their coffee at the cafe. And then that could be something that also we link to in an e-newsletter. We could link to the YouTube video, or like the sign, the educational material could sort of sit on our website, and then we could link to that in an e-newsletter as well. So yeah, many different kind of ways we could share that content and ideas on that topic.
Thank you. And the other thing I was thinking as you were speaking is that in terms of the largest piece of content you're sort of saying is the YouTube. So because that, like a reel can only be 3 minutes, most people might be watching maybe 45 seconds of that, or 15 to 45 seconds of a reel. And on YouTube, you could make something slightly longer. So it would sort of make sense to begin with that and then start making the cuts for a reel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good idea.
And then from there, we also talked about the idea that things don't need much of a change from that point to be on Facebook. So quite a similar piece of content for an Instagram reel, for Facebook, TikTok. And then in terms of there being like this other resource that's connected, that's a print resource that can be connected to this sort of video content, and that's something that could be downloaded and printed by any cafe or that cafe or whatever, and then also that can be used as like in an email. You can say, here's the thing that you can download and here's the link to either YouTube or somewhere else. So from here, what we're trying to do is we're sort of getting people to go round and round in our ecosystem of our content creation connection points. So we're making sure that some people are going to be overlapping in terms of that audience, but others are going to be completely separate. So making sure that we've got content for all of those people and making it more sustainable for us to be creating that content, because it's exhausting having to create new content fresh all the time for every connection point. So making sure that we've got these same themes so we can create that piece of content. It's a bit like, if we're going to shoot a video, it's good to shoot a few stills while we're there, because then we can use it for, for that email or for a place that doesn't allow video content. So making sure that if we're going to put this effort in and make these stories, that we're going to be able to have as many outcomes as possible of a really high quality, so that we can share it across those connection points. Because remembering that even if you have an email list with thousands of people on it, still quite a high amount of people will look at it, but not everyone will read it. But maybe they're on Instagram with you too, and maybe they see the content on Instagram instead. And it gets reinforced across all these different platforms, touch points, connection points. So I just wanted to remind you that that's also a way of being able to be able to create this content consistently over time while you're an ambassador, to make sure that you're doing it intentionally, so that it's not exhausting for you, and you can spend a little less time doing it but have greater impact to more people. And I have one last question for you before we finish about, and you might be able to chime in on this one, Rebecca. So when we share our stories and our content, we're often asking people to do something called a call to action. In this call to action, not only are we showing them, yes, here's the call to action is partly the story, which is bring your own plastic bag. Is there anything else for the Plastic Free Foundation that we're asking people to do? Are we asking them to subscribe to a newsletter? Are we asking them to follow us on another platform? Are we asking them to tell a friend? Like, what are the calls to action for the Plastic Free Foundation?
Yeah, thanks, Bo. I think it's all of the above. It's, you can do this too. Or it might be we might share a photo from a cafe that has, we keep talking about cafes a lot today, a basket of reusable cups for people to borrow, and then people could tag their local cafe and say, oh, look how easy this is. Could you do this too? Or we might share somewhere you can buy products in bulk and ask people, what are the alternatives in your area? Or we might share something about how to make a celebration plastic free, and we ask for other ideas. So there's that. There's also the taking part. We've got the Plastic Free Pledge initiative we shared with you the other day. So I think it's it's like, or share your story with us, like, because that's often how we find out what different people are doing. So it's kind of a bit of the kind of main call to action is you can do this too, or share your ideas or your stories or your connections, because that's when we learn and together inspire and empower more people.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is that for every piece of content, if there's one of those calls to action at the end of that piece of content. So it's like, here's this piece of content about reusable, not using takeaway cups while you're sitting down. But the call to action at the bottom of that could be anything from share this with your local cafe to tagging a friend to subscribe to my newsletter to any of the calls to action. So it would be interesting to make sure that, I guess, all of those calls to action are sort of listed somehow, so that for every piece of content that every ambassador is producing, that there is that they can just pick 1, 2, 3, 4, so that they're slowly, so that people are not just saying, here's the conference room with the, here's the solution to the conference room plastic bottle problem. They're also, and please, you're asking them to do something specific. So I think that's also an important, as the sort of full stop at the end of the story, is to make sure that they have that little piece of information at the end. What's the call to action? And it can be very small. It can be tag a friend, or it can be share this post, but it can also be meet us on Saturday at this beach cleanup. So it can be more of a commitment of time and energy from people, and it might be to do with their geographic location. So I think just important to make sure there's a little full stop at the end. You're giving people ways to support you all the time, and they're all different ways all the time. So yeah. Is there any other comments before we close? Would anyone like to share any highlight, like golden nuggets, or any information that they found to be important in this process? Something that they've got their biggest takeaway in a non-disposable cup? Their biggest takeaway thought or idea from this? No? What about you, Rebecca? Have you got a bit of a takeaway from this?
I think for me, it's just thinking a bit more deeply about how we share and to who, and what the difference is we are going to make. And feeling excited that you've shared with us, Bo. You've taken us all on this journey together. We have so much enthusiasm and people living in different places and different lives. So I think I'm excited by the opportunity. I think one thing I would say also is that we don't ever worry or measure what you're doing on likes or engagement or clicks, because I get often really surprised when someone will say, they've seen something I've shared on LinkedIn and they thought about something differently or understood or went and did something, but we don't always know that. And, one time, I think one of our most successful social media posts ever, I was following none of your steps, Bo. It was back in the days where the algorithm wasn't the same, but I took a photo of that basket of cups in a cafe and it was a bit blurry, and it just had this sign on a board saying recycled mugs to take away, reduce use of paper cups, please return. And they were nice looking cups, and I quickly needed to post something, so I grabbed a photo and put it on Instagram. It was actually down in Albany near where you live, Bo, and I went back to that cafe the next day and I said to the barista, I took that photo yesterday. I just asked them about that, and they looked at me because I obviously don't look like an influencer, and they said, "Oh, were you the one that took that photo? The owner wants to speak to you." And that photo had been shared like 7,000 times or something. It had gone viral. Some actor in Hollywood had reshared it, and everyone would tag their cafe going, you know, will you, I've got some spare cups, could you do this? Sorry, that is an example of something that was kind of went a bit viral, and it was even covered in the newsletter. But like this girl, Kate, who did this at this cafe, she was just doing it because it was the right thing, and I saw it and it was a good thing to share, you know, and it just inspired so many people. And it might be lots of people, or it might just be that one person that says, oh, I'm going to switch to bottles. And I think the more, I don't know, like the more real we make our stories and the more human connections we have, there's so much that's negative and doom and gloom, whereas I think you've given us a great structure to follow to help more people see our stories and for it make more difference.
Yeah, and Jess has mentioned here about setting the scene, and I think that's the thing, because we're already in our life, we're already living our life. We just assume that everybody knows that, but we're all in different places. So making, you know, assumptions about other people and where they are and their, you know, what it is we're doing. So that context of making sure we know, you know, the story of the plastic bags being weighed separately, like the context of that. It's like in Fiji, in the market, you know, on this, you know, these are the things that people really need to know, and that gives people a way to come into your story. Yeah. Yeah, I think good ideas are definitely worth sharing. So make it easy for people to share, because, you know, you've got a good idea, but make it easy for other people to access it, to share it, you know, and making it positive is a really great way to do that. So I think we're out of time. Thank you for sharing the link to the cafe story that you just talked about, I'm assuming, Rebecca. I really appreciate all of your time and energy, and again, congratulations, and I really in all support of you, and I'm going to try to do the 31 days of ideas with you. So I hope to connect with you all on social media and in the many places that you are, and organize myself to get back on Substack. I haven't been a bit slow going there, so that's reminded me to do that too, and how we might be able to share these stories. So hope to connect with you all soon, and thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me, Rebecca and Charlotte. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bo. And you don't need to do all 31 days, just choose a few. Don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Is that right? Okay, so